Blog Talk Radio.
You're listening to Funky Monkey MMA. Funky Monkey.
Welcome to another edition of the Funky Monkey MMA Radio. I am Rob Mead, joined by my co-host, Freddie Rodriguez. How you doing today, bub?
Doing real well. Excited about our guest tonight.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Today we have Dave Davis, who's an announcer. He is announced all over the world. You might have seen him on ESPN Friday Night Fights. He's been on Showtime along with many others. How you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Just living life.
Good to hear. So I want to ask you, since you have traveled all over the world, where's your favorite place to go?
Probably Vancouver, Canada has been my favorite place that I've been to.
Have you ever announced hockey, Dave?
Say that one more time.
Have you ever announced any hockey?
No, I haven't. I've never announced hockey. Really, I kind of cut my teeth doing rodeo. I was a bull rider and got into doing rodeo and obviously gravitated to the all bull riding events. So that's basically where I cut my teeth announcing, was in the rodeo arenas. And it was a lot of fun. It's a lot different than MMA. It's a lot different than anything else I've ever been a part of. It's real fast-paced. You talk solid for about 4 hours. There's not really many breaks, and you have to be real careful on what you say. It's big Christian crowds. It's big politically correct crowds, so you have to be real careful on what you say.
Absolutely. You don't have to worry about that too much with MMA crowds. They're probably pretty bloodthirsty at this point.
Oh, absolutely. MMA crowds are a lot of fun. I remember the first time I stepped into the cage to do MMA, and I was blown away by the crowd, and I remember thinking to myself, I go, man, rodeo is fun, MMA is exciting. I've found my home. This is where I belong. This is where the violence that I like to project in my voice and the energy that I throw out. This is my crowd. This is where I belong.
Do you find yourself at the edge of your seat? I find myself a lot of times when I'm, even coaching, and I'm, either backstage or right there at cage side, I find myself always putting a little English on it, as if I can will them to throw the punch I want them to, or I can feel that takedown going down. Do you feel yourself doing that when you're announcing?
Occasionally. I have one of the best seats in the house, and it depends on the fight. Sometimes when I come straight out of the ring, I'll walk you through that. When I come straight out of the ring, first thing I'm doing is I'm preparing for the next fight. No matter how bad I want to see this fight in the cage, I have to be prepared for the next fight, if there are any, after the main event. So obviously, that's the first thing that's on my mind. And then I start watching the fight. If it's, a fight that's just kind of boring, not really going nowhere, then I'm working on my notes, still preparing. But if it's an up-tempo fight and a lot of transition going on, definitely. I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm moving around. If there's a post in front of me, I'm leaning to the side, trying to get a better view. And the one thing I do, though, is the people behind me paid to be there. And I never want to knock somebody out of a good, view of the fight. So I try to be conscious of the people behind me. But sometimes it's a great fight. It's hard to do that.
Oh, I can see that for sure. I feel like a good announcer, like let's say Bruce Buffer or his brother, Michael Buffer, and yourself. I was watching some videos of you this week, getting prepared for this interview, and just the energy you guys bring to the fight when you come out there and do the announcing. And I've been where there's some very, shall we say, mediocre announcers where they just say the guy's name, where he's from, and the fight happens. I feel like the crowd, you bring the crowd into it. You can excite a crowd, you can bring a crowd up, and you can build that, too, to the main event. I've seen professionals, and I watched you do this, actually, what maybe made it come to my mind. I watched you do some fights where you announced and you kind of build it to a crescendo. And when you got to the main event, your excitement level seemed to feed the crowd. I think that's a big thing in your announcing style.
We call it the fuse on the fireworks effect. I've got the best seat in the house. I have to be excited. I have to bring the energy. But I'll let you in on it a little bit. I'm pretty controversial a lot of times when when I'm making statements out there, I say a lot of things. You know, if the most exciting thing about your introduction is your tuxedo, you're cheating the fans, you're cheating the fighters. It's easy, you know, it's easy to sit there and just read names and say them pretty, Holyfield, you know, do all that colorful stuff. But when I announce or introduce fighters, I'm not introducing for the crowd. My job is to introduce the fighter for him. I look him straight in the eye, and I can feed off his energy, and I can see a change happening right there. It's up to me to take this guy. He's at a 10. It's my job to take him to a 15 before the strikes even start. If he's got a big crowd there, you're going to hear me build it up even more. But, you know, if I give anything less than 110% for these fighters, then I'm cheating them. I'm cheating the fans. I'm making easy money. I'm there just collecting a paycheck. I'm there to earn money. Well, I'm there to work my butt off to make sure that this is the best fight in the world. And the other thing is, some of the fighters I introduce will never be in the UFC. Some of them will never go past a mid-level. I want to give them an introduction as if they were in the UFC or if they were at the top level of the sport. I mean, it's only fair to them to do that, and I feel like anything less is cheating them and being selfish.
That's a very interesting insight there. I wouldn't have thought that, but now that you say it, I can understand where you're getting a fighter ready, and you can really control the excitement of the beginning of the fight by how psyched up the fighters are to actually get started by their introduction. That's a really interesting thing. I would have known that. It's a good insight.
Well, a guy from Showtime come up to me, and he gave me one of the coolest compliments I've ever seen. He goes, it's weird watching you, man. He goes, because when fighters enter the cage or the ring, he said, they're fighters. He said, but when you get done introducing them, you turn them into killers. He goes, they want to do nothing but absolutely kill the person standing in front of them.
That's something really good. The promoters who are looking for announcers should be looking for an announcer who understands that insight. That can control the whole show. If you have an announcer who's not doing that job, that particular aspect of the recipe of an announcer, that could ruin the whole thing for your show.
Well, I'm hired to hype these fights. I mean, I look at my job as an announcer. I can stand there and classic announce with the best of them. But my job, the way I see it, is I'm half announcer, half carnival barker. Hey, come see the bearded lady. It's my job to hype this fight and send it over the edge. I had a fan one time told me, he wrote a comment on something. He goes, I wasn't fighting, but I was sitting in the crowd, and you made me want to punch the guy sitting next to me. He goes, I was so ready to fight.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's the big thing. Every fighter that I introduce, every one of them knows I'm going to look them straight in the eye. I'm going to feed off their energy as I'm introducing them. And it had happened. I was coming back across the cage one time. I was at the U.S. Sailor Coliseum in Bloomington, Illinois. And there was this little referee named Dwayne Best, real good guy. But I come back across the cage, to approach my other fighter. And Dwayne told me, or after the bout, Dwayne told me, he said, hey, man, he said, when you come across the cage, man, he said, you look like you want to kill me. I said, at that moment, Dwayne, I do. I said, I'm full of adrenaline and just violence, and I'm ready to unleash it. I can feel it from the fighters, and I'm ready to unleash it.
I'm ready to hit somebody now.
It's the truth, though. I mean, I'm the man in there. My job is to get everything going, be the hype man, and be the fuse on the fireworks. And that's basically how I look at my job. I'm not the one in there swinging and doing the hard work, but it's my job to prep these guys and get them ready. I'm the last thing they're going to see before they start getting punched in the face or punching somebody in the face. So why am I going to stand in there and tell jokes and try to be funny and try to win the crowd? I'm hired for the fighters. Anybody can stand there and read names.
That's really interesting.
So I wanted to ask you, was there ever a defining moment in your life where you decided you wanted to make this a career?
I was 5 years old, and I know that sounds real bizarre. I was 5 years old. I lived in the country, or lived in town with my mother, and I would go spend a lot of weekends with my grandparents and summers and things, and they lived way out in the country. And it was just so lonely out there, and I couldn't stand the silence. It was nice, but the silence really got to me. I was used to the hustle and bustle of town. And my grandpa was a huge fan of AM radio. Well, my grandmother, not to get off track, my grandmother would not allow him to have a TV in the house because of religion. And so my grandpa always had an AM radio that we listened to. And I fell in love with all the old radio announcers, doing the commercial for my cornbread. 99, I fell in love with all of that stuff. And then the neighbor had cable TV, so my grandpa would slip over to his house and watch wrestling. Between wrestling and listening to AM radio, I knew what I wanted to do. I absolutely loved it, and I've had a passion for it ever since I was that young.
That's incredible. Who are some of your announcing, heroes, people that you emulated?
I would probably say the biggest one growing up is cliche as all get out, but he's the king. I mean, you just can't deny Michael Buffer. He's absolutely the king, and he's got the classic voice, the catch lines, the whole 9 yards. He's got the looks. It's he had to be probably the sole announcer that I looked up to and emulated all growing up. In the rodeo world, there was a guy named Bill Clay. He was an excellent announcer. He's one that took me under his wing as well. I really looked up to him. He showed me the ropes for the first year I was announcing. I was basically doing an internship under him. And, but I mean, gosh, there's so many. There's a lot of them still announcing today. I really like Jimmy Lennon Jr. I mean, I like Jimmy doing boxing more than I do MMA, but I really like Jimmy Lennon Jr. I like Joe Martinez a lot. The list gets pretty narrow after that because I'm really competitive. That's one thing I am. Now, one thing in this business, when I stepped into announcing, no one showed me the ropes. No one helped me do anything. They was real afraid. And I've had to kick the door in. I've had to come in with my aggressive style and state by state, fan by fan, fighter by fighter, and do my thing. And it's been a long road. It's paying off. How about you fellas, though? I'm going to ask you guys a question. I've had this on my mind. You get to do this cool show every week. It's got to be a lot of fun to talk to really interesting guests. And I've looked back at your guest list, and you've had some amazing interviews on your show. That's got to be a great feeling and somewhat prideful inside.
Well, for me, this all happened as an accident. Rob hit me up one day and talked to me about my company and wondered if I wanted to be involved. And I said, hey, I've done some voiceovers before. I've been in the UFC. I cornered Dan Severn in the UFC, and I've got a little experience. I've got some contacts. And I said, if you want some help, I'll help you out. Rob's been doing this a lot longer than I have, but yeah, this is what I do on Saturday fight nights anyway. If I'm not at a fight show sitting with my friends telling them what's about to happen, I'm sitting in my living room telling my girlfriend, Amber, hi baby, I love you, I'm telling her this is what's getting ready to happen in the next fight. This is what this guy's doing. He's about to throw a spinning kick. He's going for an omoplata. I'm doing this anyway. So the chance that I get to do now, sit here and talk to these guys and say, hey, what were you thinking at this moment? And talk to somebody like you. I've been a fighter. I've been in that cage looking at an announcer, and I've been there when there's good ones, and I've been there when there's some of the mediocre ones. And getting to actually pick your brain and pick their brain and see what people are thinking. I'm kind of curious anyway, and I never shut up, so this is kind of my dream job.
Oh, I can imagine. I'm sure that's just a lot of fun. I used to do a talk show, and I love interviewing fighters, but when I did, I got off on the most ridiculous questions in the world. I would ask, what's your favorite food after weigh-ins? What do you have to have? What are you craving? What are you saving up for? And I'm a food lover. It's obvious if you see the pictures. and the fighters and I, we'd just have the best time talking about food. And I would look back at an interview, and it would be 15 minutes of food versus 10 minutes, 5 minutes of, hey, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What were you thinking at this moment?
I think that's more interesting. I think that getting into the mind of the person, getting to know them a little more. There's a few fighters that I look at now that I'm, quote unquote, a fan of, and I think it's because I know more of who they are than, say, the polished image. When I just said polished image in my mind, I thought of Alex Rodriguez right away, and how his monumental talent was something everybody was in love with, but I never really knew the guy because he had that polished image. And Jeter and the other guys who, put their heart on their sleeve and showed you who they really were, those are the guys I really follow. One of the fighters that comes to mind that I've been a fan of forever, and I don't really, other than that I know so much about his history, is Chris Lieben. Watching what he's been through from The Ultimate Fighter and, seeing his troubles and his struggles and what he's been through. The night that he fought Vanderlei Silva, I was at the edge of my seat because I was hoping this kid could finally make it, go through the things he's been through and triumph. Getting to know that little insight to the fighters and, to everybody we've interviewed means a lot to me. That interview we did with Dan Severn where you were involved in was huge to me because I know Dan really well, and I'm waiting for him to say some of the stories that I'm a part of and saw. I think those things make a huge difference.
Wow, that's fantastic. I do have one question for you. I know we're going to have to take a station identification here, but one question I did have. You were talking about the fighters coming in, laying it out all on the line. We appreciate a good fight. We appreciate a fighter leaving it all in the ring, and you have to ask yourself, shouldn't we appreciate when all the staff lay it all on the line and give 110% every single time? Because that's what really makes a complete show, is when everyone is giving 110%.
That's really, really true. I'm part of the underground. I mention it every show, it seems like. But when I'm on the underground and I see people talking about the production values of the UFC versus Bellator versus, the other shows out there, XFC has a great production value. When you watch those intros, I'm looking at that and thinking, how much work went into that? How much work went into filming that gladiator sequence or that, the robot entrance on Fox Sports where UFC is going to be, XFC's, old school Pride sort of introductions. That's a lot going on there. The announcers, the ring guy, the ring girls, the referees. I've been a referee as well. There's a lot of work that goes into two guys getting into a cage and punching each other.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It pays off. It shows when everyone's trying to give them 110%. But I know we got to take a commercial break here, so I'll let you guys do that part.
You're listening to Funky Monkey MMA.
Real quick, I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsors, Hype Extreme Fighting. Hype Extreme, where true athletes go for gear and support. Hype, helping you prepare every day. Go ahead and visit them on Twitter and Facebook. Over on Facebook.com/Hype Extreme. And also visit them online at hypeextreme.com. Also, I'd like to shout out to KOBKfighter.com. You can visit them on Facebook as well. And go check out their website at KOBKfighter.com. Grab you a $10 T-shirt and some awesome G-shorts. Telling you what, they got some awesome gear. Both badass. Go check them out right now.
You're listening to Funky Monkey MMA.
I love that, by the way, Dave. That was a surprise to me. I did not know that was going to be there today. That is awesome.
No problem. I'm an audio nerd. I'm in my studio right now. I spend most of my time out here cutting voiceovers, and it was no problem. I had a good time doing it, and got to be a little creative at times. So it was a lot of fun. I appreciate you allowing me to do it and then displaying it on the show.
So I'd like to ask you, Dave, what other commercials and movies have you done voiceovers for?
Well, I'm not doing any movies or anything at the moment. I've done a lot of commercials for different things. Probably the most the weirdest commercial I've ever done was I done one for a movie theater in Turkey that basically just said, this movie's being shown in English. It was, I think, like a 7-second spot. I've done a few commercials in Polish and Chicago, but mostly a lot of local Midwest voiceovers. A lot of my friends, they get the national gigs. My buddy Jim Fishback, he's on TNA Wrestling. He's the voice on Grand Theft Auto. He's got the big ones. And myself, I mostly do Midwest. I do a lot of fight voiceovers. I'm trying to think here what all I've done them for. I've done them for just about everything. From barbecue sandwiches being on sale to car lots.
That's great.
I mean, if somebody's willing to advertise at a radio station wanting to say Girl Scout cookies or buy one, get one free, I've done those. So.
While we got a second, Dave, why don't you let them know how they can get a hold of you if they're looking for somebody to do something like that for them.
It's easy. They can go to itsfighttime.com or prommaannouncer.com. I'm on Facebook. Look me up, Dave Davis. Got a fan page and have a regular page on there. Facebook.com/announcer Dave Davis. I'm on Twitter. You know, the normal social media. Everyone's there, so it's really easy to find me there. Matter of fact, I don't even know why I have a website these days. With social media, and for the internet period has probably progressed my career by 10 years. So, I mean, social media is just absolutely fantastic. Anyone that doesn't use it is really missing out.
That's for sure.
You know, while we're on here, and we've been talking about announcing and things, I mean, my career has really progressed a lot, and it's grown really fast. This is my 5th year in combat sport. I think my 5th, possibly my 6th year in combat sports. And it's just been lightning speed, just climbing. Past 2 years, I've won Announcer of the Year with Fire Sanctioning here in the Midwest, which is where I'm located in the Midwest. I mean, I go all over. But my career has just been growing, and MMA is a really small world, and the business period is basically about networking. And, the career has grown really fast. But there's been a lot of really cool things that's been happening, and it's really been paying off. I just picked up Rockwell's Watches is a big sponsor of mine now, and that's thanks to Missouri on Management with Lisa Webb there. Rockwell's come on board now. I'm wearing their watches. And I mean, that's just an unbelievable badge for me that someone thinks enough of what I do that they want me to wear their product. That's amazing.
Very cool.
Yeah, and being an announcer, to have that happening, I mean, that's just unbelievable. I mean, this is things that when you're a kid, you dream about it, but when it starts happening, it's still very surreal, and you're like, wow, this is amazing, and it just humbles you because, like I said, it's a sign of dreams coming true, and it seems like every day I have some sort of milestone dream from when I was a kid happening, and I'm like, wow, can you believe this? And of course, I'll tell my mom, and I'll tell my wife about things, and my friends, and I'll go, can you believe this? And they're like, yeah, we can. You don't surprise us anymore.
I got a similar situation to that. I trained my whole life. I was in martial arts, and some of my friends who are listening to this are laughing at me right now. But I always told everybody that I was going to be there someday. One day I was going to be there. Well, I was a little too old. I was 34 when I had my last MMA fight, and it was not a good one. Don't watch it on YouTube. It's terrible. But, fate would have it. I met Dan Severn at a mall one day. We just kind of hooked up and spoke the same language, became friends, and helping him train. And I'm actually the one who made the phone call that said, hey, Dan, you should get into UFC. This Gary Goodwin dropped out of this fight. See if you can get this fight with Pedro Hizzo. All right, the fight didn't end up really well, but I got to tell you, the whole experience, walking Dan out to the cage, being on pay-per-view, meeting everybody that night, saying to myself, I wonder if my dad's watching right now. It happened. Guess what? I'm cornering Dan Severn, UFC Hall of Famer, in the UFC. That was a pretty big, surreal experience for me. And every time I see the video, I watch the video, and I watch it all the time. I'll see myself walking out, and it doesn't even feel like it's me.
That's incredible. That's one of those moments that you look back, and you just have to smile. And I have these moments all the time where I wake up and go, you know what, if I was to die today, sure, I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I've accomplished enough to be proud of.
I think I can definitely relate to that sentiment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a lot of those moments that happen. I have 2 sons. I'm a stay-at-home dad through the week. I announce fights on the weekend. That's basically what I've been doing all day is preparing. I have 2 shows this weekend, a Friday and Saturday show, one in Missouri and one in Indiana. And, it's packing the tuxedos, getting everything right. But anyways, I'm a stay-at-home dad, and my boys mean the world to me. And a lot of times I always think, if something was to happen to me, what will my boys think of this career that I've built? That's, I've spent so many years, sacrificed so much, gone a lot on the weekends, obviously. What will they think of what I have accomplished so far? And I I think I'm pretty proud of what I've accomplished so far. I'm not done by no means, but still looking forward to the future.
So where are you announcing this weekend? You said you have one in Indiana?
Yeah, Friday night I'm at the Ameristar Casino with Rumble Time Promotions. We have an MMA show there, and then when that show's over, I got to head straight over to Terre Haute, Indiana, and we are at the Terre Haute, Indiana Fairgrounds with Griggs Entertainment, which I'll be back with Griggs Entertainment August 24th in San Diego as well. We'll be on the beach out there. So it's going to be a good show, a good time. Yeah, August 30th. August 30th, I'm on with Titan Fighting Championships doing Access TV. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that. I was supposed to have done Access last September with Titan, and the show got rained out, or there was a chance of rain. It was an outdoor event at the Dwight Davis Tennis Center. They called a stop to the event the day before, canceled it. And I was really jazzed up looking for that Access TV debut. It's taken a while to get back on there, but really stoked, man. It's going to be almost a year in the coming. So I'm going to be laying it on the line for the Access crowd.
I can't wait to see that show now. Now I have to put that on my calendar so I can make sure that I'm there to see your premiere on there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been real torn. When I do boxing, I always want to be a classic boxing announcer because I don't want to freak the crowds out, because I've seen the crowd go, oh, my God, what is this? And when I do boxing, my boxing promoters these days, they're all like, we want you to be Dave Davis. We want you to be the stuff announcer. We want you to bring the energy, aggression, and just go for it. So I'm doing some boxing next month in Youngstown, Ohio, or September in Youngstown, Ohio. And we're going to see what's going to happen. I got a feeling they're going to give me the green light and tell me to be Dave Davis at that show. I'm going to be Opie announcing Willie the Great Nelson, number 3 in the world. So it's going to be a good show.
So you said guy was number 3 in the world. What is your most memorable fight? What's the most memorable fight you've announced?
There's probably 2 of them. Will Campazano versus Josh Sampo is probably the most memorable fight I have ever introduced. Josh is a buddy of mine. He lost in the 3rd round, and it was one of those fights where it's just a back and forth fight. Both guys really trying to impose their will on each other. 3rd round, Josh shot in for a double leg, and Will Campazano timing it all night and caught him with a knee and knocked him out cold. And in a main event, you just can't have a better finish than that.
Yeah, it put a stamp on the end of it. I definitely feel that way. I've been actually been on the losing end or the receiving end of one of those knee knockouts myself. Thank you, Michael Buell, for that. But I think that is the sudden ending in MMA that boxing seems to be lacking at this point, especially in the heavyweight division, where you have the Klitschko's being the champion, and they're great boxers, but they're not finishing anybody. That Mike Tyson finish, or Vanderlei Silva finish, that you can have at any moment in MMA, anything can happen. I think that's what's changing the view of MMA and boxing at this point.
Well, you're right. Boxing's underutilized in MMA, or has been, but I'm starting to see a lot more of it. And this past Friday night, I saw a female knockout at a weight of, I think they were at 125 pounds, and it wasn't a TKO, it wasn't stoppage due to strikes by no means. It was a flush knockout on the feet, stone cold, girl was out. And I thought, you know what, that's what women MMA needs as well. WMMA, that's exactly what it needs as well.
Yeah, the littler fight this weekend, Mighty Mouse versus Moraga, that fight was a good fight, and Mighty Mouse looked amazing in that fight. His skill level is ridiculous. But that one-punch finisher, if I know there's going to be that guy on the card, I'm definitely tuning in for that.
Oh, absolutely. That's what sells tickets. That's why boxing is so highly popular, is because people know at 80 minutes someone can get finished. If it's going to be 10 rounds of guys just playing cat and mouse, people are not going to tune in.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
We have about 30 seconds left in the show. I just wanted to give you the floor, Dave, if you wanted to shout out to any sponsors or anything.
Yeah, definitely. I want to definitely shout out Rockwell Watches. They've been fantastic and believing in my career. Missouri on management, Lisa Webb, she's been fantastic, believing in my career. Jim Jenkins as well, Steve Smith, Nowling, Josh Briggs, all of them played a major role in helping me get where I'm at today. And I have to say, hey, to Louis Alvarez out in California, he's also coming on sponsored making my clothing.
All right, well, this has been another edition of the Funky Monkey MMA Radio. I appreciate you all for listening. You can visit us on Facebook.com/TheFunkyMonkeyMMA or at FunkyMonkeyMMA.Wix.com/FunkyMonkeyMMA. Dave, we appreciate you coming on the show today, man. It was a pleasure.
I really enjoyed talking to you, Dave. We got to do this again.
Yes, definitely, fellas. Thanks for having me on.
Also, while you're at it, go ahead and like us on Facebook and go ahead and subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube, all of our interviews. And while you're at it, go ahead and check out Hype Extreme Fighting over at hypeextreme.com and KOBKfight.com. Check them out for some t-shirts, some awesome t-shorts. This has been another edition of the Funky Monkey MMA Radio. I'm Rob Mead.
Good, Rodriguez.
We appreciate you. Have a good night.
Funky Monkey MMA.